Hello, I hope that you're well and that you're having a good day or night. And today we're going to be setting up a bullet journal for 2022. And in this video, I'm actually going to be sharing quite a few spread ideas with you, so if you don't like any of them, feel free to keep the ones you like and leave the ones you don't when you're actually setting up your journal. Now let's get into the setup. And I'm going to be using this dot grid green journal, and I really like to match the color of my setup to my journal, so this setup is actually going to be green with a little bit of black and gold thrown in. And by the way, this setup is going to be fairly minimal, so if you are not into that, then feel free to click away, but I decided to keep it fairly minimal this time just because I had so many spreads to set up and I wanted to kind of keep things simple. So we're starting off with a very simple index, and I'm just writing the title in gold and outlining it in this sort of overlapping parallelogram and adding a few leafy vines to both sides just to match the green color of my journal. The next spread is going to be a This Journal Belongs To spread, and I'm setting that up after all of the pages that my journal has set aside for the index, and I'm just writing the first portion in gold and the next portion in black just to add a little bit of contrast. And again outlining it in two overlapping squares and adding a vine to the left just to make the spread a little bit more interesting. Next up we have the 2022 spread, and I'm actually really happy with how this one came out, even though it is really simple. And I just used two gold circles and wrote 2022 inside in black. And then I added a vine where the circles overlap just to make things a little bit more fun. By the way, I think I forgot to mention, but another aspect of my theme is just geometric shapes. So circles, squares, rectangles, things like that. So you will be seeing that a lot as well. The next spread is my grid spacing cheat sheet. Now, most people make this as an actual grid, but I decided to write it out because I was pretty sure that that would be sufficient for my needs and in fact might actually be a little bit more helpful for me. And here I'm just writing down the number of grids for each, portion of the page. And I actually went back and added more things to this later when I realized that I was kind of missing some. And this part is actually kind of funny because while starting the year at a glance page on the right side of the spread, I actually realized that I only wrote down the numbers for the vertical portion of the spread and not the horizontal portion. And I kind of needed those for the other side of the spread, so I am just adding those in at the bottom. Luckily, I did have some space left, and I actually really like how it came out. I like how I ended up kind of adding the horizontal vine there and the vertical vine for the vertical portion, since that kind of really helps me to figure out which portion belongs to which part. Next up is the year at a glance. And I'm using my calendar stamps for this one, and I really like to use those for my habit trackers on pretty much a monthly basis, and it makes upsetting my habit tracker so much easier, but this time I decided to use them for my year at a glance spread as well. and I'm just picking the appropriate calendar and stamping that in. And after that, I'm just going to be writing in the name of the month at the top portion. After I'm done stamping everything in, I'm just going to be enclosing the title in another overlapping geometric shape and writing in the names of the month in green, just to add a little bit of green to the spread. The next spread is my future log. And here again, I'm using those same calendar stamps, and I'm going to be writing in the names of the month inside them in green after I'm done stamping them in. And I just left a little bit of space underneath each month for any notes or events that I might have to add in there. As usual, I'm outlining the title in another overlapping geometric shape, and to decorate this spread just a little bit more, I added a vine on each side of the title in green. The next spread is actually a really simple one, but I really liked how this came out. And I just added 2 overlapping circles for the 2021 portion, and then I added gold overlapping rectangles over the second part of the title, which is in review. And I really kind of like the opposite coloring going on here and the circle and rectangle combination. And just to make the spread a little bit more interesting and add a little bit of green, I'm filling in the rest of the empty space at the top with another green vine. The next spread is actually very new to me, and it is 2022 in photos. And I've never done a spread like this, but I thought that it would be a lot of fun to add one just because, well, I don't really take enough photos of important moments in my life, so I thought that having a spread to kind of put them into at the end of the year would kind of help me do that more often. So here it is. I just wrote a very simple title at the top, making the 2022 stand out a little by writing it in gold and adding a vine to the right of that. And then I'm just drawing overlapping rectangles for each of the photos. And I needed 1 extra page for this spread just because I wanted to keep it to 4 photos per page, since that seemed like a very nice even number, so I ended up using 3 spreads, but I kept things cohesive by adding that same green vine at the top of the spread. And after I finished drawing all of that in, I'm just writing the names of the month in gold in the middle. And then I had this kind of random empty page here, and I didn't really feel like adding another functional spread there just because I wanted to keep those pages kind of dedicated to the photos. So instead I decided to add a quote because I hadn't added one yet, and I thought that this would be the perfect place to do so. And I just drew 2 overlapping gold circles to kind of encircle the quote and added a little green vine at the bottom to decorate it a little bit. And the quote says, "Act as if what you do makes a difference." It does. And I thought that this was a very nice quote to have in my journal, because I tend to kind of focus on the negative and kind of get disappointed if I don't accomplish something in a more major way. So I thought that this would be a nice reminder that whatever actions we take, they still do make a difference, even if it is a small one, and small differences are still important. I realize that this quote can actually be interpreted in other ways. For example, behave well, because that really does make a difference in the world, but I decided to interpret it in, well, the way I just mentioned. Moving on to the next spread. Here I'm drawing 2 more overlapping circles for the year and enclosing the rest of the title in 2 rectangles again. And this is my 2022 bucket list. So I started doing seasonal bucket lists as soon as I started my bullet journal, which was, I believe, about 1.5 years ago at this point. And I decided to make a yearly bucket list as well. I honestly can't remember if I added one to my journal last year, but I don't think so. Anyways, I thought that this would be a very nice spread to have, just to kind of figure out what I want to do during that year. The next spread is the Song of the Month on the left and the series I'm watching on the right. And I decided to kind of group these spreads together because they're both, well, media related. And I haven't done either one of these spreads before, but I decided to try them out because I thought it would be very interesting to kind of go back and see what I was listening to and what I was watching. Also, for the series that I'm watching that are ongoing, I tend to kind of forget about them after I've caught up. And that can be a problem because I'll have this kind of vague feeling that I want to watch something, but I'll have no idea what it is or what it's called. So this spread would actually be very helpful for me. And to decorate it, I'm kind of separating it in the middle with another green vine. The next spread I'm actually really happy with, and I decided to do 2 overlapping circles on the left and 2 overlapping rectangles on the right to kind of make the spread a little bit more contrasting. And it is my things to check out spread on the left, so basically songs, books, movies, I don't know, classes, just anything that I hear about or that people recommend to me that I want to check out. And on the right is the very, very important budget tracker spread. The next spread is actually another one that I'm really happy with how it came out. And for this one, I drew 3 overlapping circles, one of which kind of has less space in it because it kind of falls off the bottom of the page. And I wrote the titles kind of following the outlines of the circles, and I thought that that was just a very fun alternative to just writing them on the top of the page. And this spread is my things to keep doing, things to start doing, and things to stop doing spread. And I purposefully put the things to stop doing at the bottom because I didn't want to have as much space for it, because I knew that I would be tempted to write down a lot of things for that just because that's the kind of person I am, and I wanted to kind of try to focus more on the positive rather than the negative. And I decorated the spread just a little bit more with another green vine at the bottom. For the next spread, I'm actually using quite a few circles again. And this is actually another spread where I made a mistake. And you'll see me kind of trying to white out it out, but now that I'm looking back at it, I wish I just cut out a piece from the back of my journal to cover it, and I might actually go back and do that later because I can kind of still see the mistake with the whiteout, and it does kind of bother me. Anyways, this is my 2022 goals and dreams spread. So at the top of the spread on the left, I'm going to be writing down my 2022 goals, and after that my 5-year goals, and after that my 10-year goals. And I left a little bit less space for my 5 and 10-year goals just because I don't expect to have quite as many goals in the long term as I do for the upcoming year. And on the right, this spread is pretty much mirrored just for my dreams. And again, I added just a few green vines at the top just to add in that green color and make the spread a little bit more fun. Next up, we have the movies I watched spread. And this is another first for me, but I thought that it would actually be fun to add just to see what movies I've kind of been watching throughout the year, because I do really enjoy watching movies. And I do also really enjoy reading books, but you don't see any book spreads in this journal just because I actually have a separate reading journal. And if you want to check that out, I'll have that linked in the description box. Anyways, back to this spread. I kept the title at the top and added 2 vines and outlined the spread in a border of 2 overlapping rectangles. Next up, we have the When Did I Last and the password spread. Now, the password spread is pretty self-explanatory. I feel I'm just going to be writing down my passwords there. As for When Did I Last, I actually saw a few people doing this spread last year, and I thought that it was a really interesting idea. So you basically write down things that you kind of need to do repeatedly, and you write down when you did them last. Since I don't have a lot of space on this spread, I'm going to be writing down the date that I did something in pencil so that I can erase it later. Or I hope I will, assuming that I'll be able to find my pencil, and if not, then I'll just be using sticky note tabs. And this just kind of helps you keep track of when was the last time you did something that you need to kind of do repeatedly, just to have somewhere to write that down and see if you actually need to get on something and do it. Next up, we have my looking forward to spread, and this is one of my favorite monthly spreads to do, so I wanted to do a yearly version as well. I'm not sure, I may have actually done one last year as well, but I can't remember. Anyways, I knew that I wanted to have a spread where I can write down all of the things that I'm looking forward to for 2022, and I just wrote the title in plain black cursive, created a overlapping rectangle border, but this time in gold, and added some of those green vines. Next up, we have a project ideas spread. And here again, I'm using some more overlapping circles. But this time I made the circles gold, just to kind of change things up a little bit. And as usual, I added a green vine to decorate the spread a little bit more. Following on the heels of my project ideas spread is my project tracker spread. And since I used circles for my last spread, here I'm using rectangles for each project. And again, adding a vine at the top. And last but definitely not least, we have my 2022 in review spread. And here again, I'm using overlapping circles for the year and overlapping rectangles for the rest of the title, and just kind of filling in the rest of the top with a green vine. You'll notice that a lot of these spreads actually have very similar elements, but I try to keep them all just a little bit different just to make things more interesting while still keeping them minimal and making them really easy to recreate. And that was it. Now let's move on to a flip through of all of the spreads that we've been setting up in this video. There are definitely quite a few, but as I said, they're all fairly minimal, but I feel that using 3 different colors to kind of spice things up makes them a little bit more fun, and using different shapes and kind of altering which shapes I use for which spread also makes things a little bit more interesting. Of course, if you are not a fan of any of these spreads, feel free to not include them in your setup. And I think that was everything that I had to say. Other than that, I really hope that you enjoyed this video and that you found it useful, and I hope to see you in my next video. Be you, always. Bye!